So, hey, what's up, man? You looking good? No, so today what I wanted to riff on was the idea of the most valuable resource in the world, as far as I've figured. I think there's three resources now in the modern day that are most valuable. And they are, in no particular order, data, focus, and time. And I do believe that time, I know I just said no particular order, but I guess I lied, because I do think time is the most valuable resource of all of them. And here's why. So I've recently been thinking a lot about, what is time and why is it so important? And there's a quote that talked about how, you're not allowed to complain because you have the same 24 hours in a day that Galileo or Einstein or Leonardo da Vinci had. And I think that's a really potent idea. Because the thing about time is that no one gets more of it, no one gets less of it. And if you've ever, something I've started to do that I found really interesting was I started to sleep with my watch near my bed, and I started to wear my watch everywhere. And the reason I did that is so that I can always hear the clicking. And I think when you really take the second to consider what that means, or you really let time sink in to you, what I realized for myself was that time is so valuable because it's a commodity that only shortens as the day progresses, as our life progresses. It's always in shorter and shorter supply. To the point that I do believe that when you're 20, when you're young, every second that you have is worth like 3 when you're older. And the reason behind that is because time gives you the opportunity to exist. Existence itself is predicated on time. And if you have more existence, you are capable of creating, experiencing, learning more. So the most valuable resource has to be time. So I started sleeping with my watch on me and next to me all the time, because what it helped me realize was that every second, literally every second that the clock ticks forward is marching me towards death. And I know we all say that. And often when we do say that, or, we all understand that as an idea, but when you actualize it, when you really take it into account, for me, it changed my perspective. Because I realized if time is equivalent to existence, right? You can think of it like currency. Money buys you food. Time buys you existence. Then how do you best, how do you invest your time? How do you best monetize your time? And for me, I think what I realized that the best way to invest my time is to use it. The same way, the best way to make money is to spend money in some ways, right? Not exactly, but in some ways. That's the same thing. Because what time lets you do is time is like the eraser to the pencil that is, to the lead that is the mistakes you make. Time is like the eraser. Because with enough time, there's no mistake that's too large to rectify, I figured. And I think that's such an important concept. Because what it lets you do is, with time, you can spend 3 years when you're 20 to 23, you can spend 3 years trying something all out and fail at it. And you're still okay because you're 23. Like, you're young, dude. Make that same mistake when you're 50 and all of a sudden you're 53, 40, 43. It's harder, not impossible, harder. And I've started watching people like Gary Vee and stuff like that, and they all talk about, and all successful people, even my father, he talks about the idea that if there's anything that they could go back, they would give up everything if they could go back 20 years. Not out of regret, but because they know with time and with the knowledge they have, they can create whatever they need. And I think that's such a cool idea. Because that's kind of what you're using time to do, right? We trade time for experience and for knowledge. And that's what makes it so valuable. Because you exist. Time, the thing you buy with time is existence. It's knowledge, experience, and that's so cool. So time is an undeniably important, the most important resource. And it's not, and so with time, right? So we have decisions, we have choices to what we can do with time. We can spend time planning and writing in journals and figuring out the perfect way to live life. Or you can actualize those same things. And when you actualize the same things, what you realize is that that's the investment on time, I think. Right? So that's what makes time such an important resource as far as I figured. You know? It gives you an opportunity to return on your investment in a constant manner. And I think that's wildly important as far as I figured out. So, where am I going with this? Okay. See, dude, I always get nervous when people walk by me. Like, I'm still not used to this. So I start losing my train of thought. Okay. Time. Now, here's another cool thing I've learned. I think there's 2 layers of time. Because another way to look at time as potential, right? Time is potential. It's that which has not been executed yet. So this is a mind-blowing idea to me. The future is this idea that I can bargain with time, right? What is the future, dude? If you really think about it, the future doesn't exist, right? It's not an actual thing, but we can bargain with the future. That's what a sacrifice is, right? A sacrifice is I'm giving up something now in return for a payout in a realm that doesn't actually exist and that I have no proof exists. And the reason that's so important because there's 2 layers to time then. There's the immediate time, like me making this video right now, and then there's time on a level that kind of exists as though it's a separate realm. And that realm is the potential that time brings. And the potential that time brings is the potential of existence. So last video I talked about how, often self-loathing is the separation between who we are and who we could be. And the cool thing is who we could be in some ways exists on that temporal level of potential time. And that's why time is so important, because the things you do today, the things I do today, help actualize the potential time. It's like making a constant payment. Right? So that's why time's so important. Time is the most important resource, man. When you're 20, what time gives you the luxury to do is learn, is make mistakes. And don't get me wrong, I do believe you can do that at 40 and 50, but it's a different sort of return as far as I figured, right? It's a different sort of risk, because when you're 40 or 50, you've lost more of it, right? There are 2 people coming this way, so I'm about to lose my train of thought. But as I'm trying to figure it out, as far as I can figure it out so far, that's how it works. But I'm not sure. So I'm half convinced if I just record myself talking about it, I'll figure it out eventually. But the other thing I think is that if you treat time as a commodity, right? I mean, it's such an economical way to look at it. I guess I look at time in a bit more of a spiritual sense as well, though, because I think I'm talking about potential and the ability to trade with the future. And the thing that time does when you're 20 as opposed to 50 is that it lets you, you know what it is? It lets you exist in multiple realms of being. It lets you come forth and discover multiple facets of yourself. And when you have less and less time, you don't get to do that. And that's why people who are 50, 60, 70, 80 get stuck in their ways. Really, it's just they don't have the luxury of discovering new facets to themselves. But with time, and time used well, you do. And I guess that last part is what's most important. So yes, we have time at 20. And it freaks me out. I think I don't have anxiety, but if I do have anxiety about anything, it's about not spending time well, you know? It's about wasting time, losing time. And so, for me, it's very much a matter of how do I capitalize on my time as much as possible. So that's the thing, right? When you're 20, what you have is you have the luxury to discover new aspects of yourself, new truths, new principles, new morals, new values, and new characters, right? You get to go on the journey. And when you're older, you don't have that. So that's really what time is. Time is a trade-off. Time is the currency of existence. And if you don't use it well, this is what I figured. When you don't use time well, yeah, that's where I was. You know, how to use time well versus not well. I think time spent well is time spent in action. And the reason for that is that action begets experience. Thought does not. And maybe that's a separate video. But that's a big one. You know, you can spend all day writing journals and filling your head with great thoughts, but until you do anything, you know, everyone says that, until you do anything. But for me, it became real when I put it in context of time, because if time's a valuable, I guess action's the way you spend time, right? Going on with the same analogy. So action begets value because it forces us to, it forces experience upon us. And action, and so I think in my 20s now, that's largely what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to just run myself into the ground, doing as much as I can, having creative outputs, having, you know, scientific outputs, having, you know, I guess this is a creative output, but just trying to do as much as I can so I can capitalize on time. And I can spend as much of it as I have, because I know there's no debt collector for time, unless you want to look at death like that, right? I have so much of it. I'm like a billionaire. I'm gonna spend my money on everything I want, stupidly. And when I get older, I'll be more careful. But right now, you know, I'm spending my time carefully in the context of doing towards things that my soul calls me for, things that my heart calls me forth to. But still just spending it, just using it, doing it, instead of just sitting back and thinking. So yeah, man. I think that's good for today. Time. Use it or lose it. Literally.